Hey, looking for a podcast where you can hear from some great hockey legends, hear them tell some great stories, find out what they're up to today? Well, this is it. The Domino's Pizza Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Reda. Today's guest, a four-time Stanley Cup champion with the New York Islanders dynasty in the 1980s, the most valuable player in the 1984 Canada Cup, the only player in pro hockey history to score a regular season goal on an assist from Gordie Howe and another on an assist from Wayne Gretzky. We'll explain. Today's guest is John Tonelli. John, welcome to the show. Looking forward to catching up, my friend.
Hi, Gino. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You look good. How's your health? How are you doing?
I'm feeling pretty good. I walked a lot and exercised a lot and focus on trying to do something every day. And I feel pretty good.
Listen, over your years, you realized some dreams that people don't even dream about. You grew up as a young kid playing hockey in Milton, Ontario, small town, just maybe about an hour or so outside of Toronto. And then all of a sudden you found yourself playing on a line with Gordie Howe. That must have been something like way beyond imaginable, with Gordie and his son Mark and you all on the same line playing for the then Houston Astros of the WHA. You were just a kid. How old were you at that point?
I was 18. Wow. I was 18. Yeah, it's thinking back beyond that point in time, I was very fortunate to grow up in a town like Milton. Small town. Hockey was prevalent, and I had a lot of great coaches at the minor hockey level, and I was able to grow. The little town of Milton always wanted to play the big boys in Toronto, but that could never happen, right? Until later on. There was a time there where my older brother convinced me to try out for the junior B team in Milton, and a lot of kids my age were afraid to, because some of the owners get bad reps and kind of scared some of the kids away, and I got lucky because it scared 3 or 4 really good players away, and I decided to play, and that was my good luck break, and I got drafted by the Marlies. Got to play at Maple Leaf Gardens every Saturday afternoon, which was really special. Every once in a while we get a special guest that would come on the ice, and I'll never forget when Johnny Bauer came out and played net, and he's got no mask. And I'm barreling down that left side, and not a chance in hell was that puck going to go higher than an inch off the ice.
No kidding. Can you imagine being the guy that hit Johnny Bauer in the face with a puck? No shot.
Not me.
In retrospect, like as a kid, as an 18-year-old, you're playing on a line with Gordie and Mark Howe. Did you appreciate it the most at the time it was happening, or years later after the fact that you realized this was one of the greatest players of all time? Did you appreciate it more after your career when people kept asking you about it?
Well, I think I appreciated it a lot at the time, and even more today. That was something really special to be able to, we opened up a brand new building that first year that I was there, and we had the starting assignment, and there I am with Gordie on my right and Big Mark on my left, and Marty was playing defense with another gentleman by the name of Paul Popeil. And here we go. It all starts. And with the only problem was the chemistry wasn't really there. We tried for a certain amount of games. I don't know, 20, 25 games. And to his credit, Bill Dineen, one of the greatest coaches I've had, to start off with, he said, you know what? And they used to call me Tonto, because Gordie Howe nicknamed me Tonto. And Bill says, Johnny, we're going to put you on left wing with Terry Ruskowski and Don Laraway. And I said, okay, no problem. I'll go. Yeah. And the chemistry was there. And we started to do very well. And they put Rich Preston with Gordy and Mark, and they did really well. So it worked both ways.
You certainly drew some attention, though, because in 1977, a couple of years into your time with the WHA, the New York Islanders liked what they saw from you, and they drafted you, and you went out of the frying pan into the fire, because then all of a sudden you're on the line playing with Brian Trottier and Mike Bossy, two of the greatest of all time. What was that like for you to step into the NHL, A, and B, to step on that line with Trottier and Bossy?
Well, every once in a while, Al would tease the left side, because the left side was Clark Gillies, Bob Bourne, myself. And if we fell out of favor with Al for a day or two, he'd throw somebody else beside Trotz and Boss. And boy, did you ever appreciate that, because they made life easy. Trotz being the passer he was, and to play with a guy like Boss, your goal is just get it on a stick. Just get it on his plate.
Intimidating at times, John?
Pardon me?
Was it intimidating at times playing with those guys?
No, it was, I don't want to use the word easy, because it was never easy playing out there. But it just came, it just came, and you knew your role. And, my role, if I was open, they were going to get it to me. If Boss was open more times than not, just get it on a stick so he could snap it and let it go.
The talent on that team, on that dynasty, Clark Gillies, Ken Morrow, Butch Goring, Gord Lane, you had so much talent. Trottier, Bossy. What was it like to step in? Just as a reminder to those listening and watching, the Islanders weren't around for very long. This was an expansion franchise that had only been around for a few years. So you really didn't know what you were getting into. You went from the WHA, that was really unknown, to the New York Islanders, which at that point was just a fledgling franchise that was growing. What was it like to be a part of that kind of growth?
It was intimidating in the beginning at training camp. I did have some of those negative thoughts, like, geez, how am I going to make this team? Am I gonna play here, right? And there was a spot for me, and I had to prove it. I played with Wayne Merrick and Bobby Nystrom in the beginning. Well, actually, my first line was Mike Kazicki and Billy Harris, and that was my first year. And I remember that we did okay. And then the second year, that's when I played with Wayne Merrick and Bob Nystrom. Wayne Merrick was, if not one of the most powerful skaters you ever seen.
Yeah.
We in practice, we'd do these line rushes, and Al would blow the whistle, and Wayne would take off like a bullet and leave me and Bobby and I behind. we'd be yelling and screaming at him, "Hey, wait for us!"
I love the quote that Mike Bossy had about you, and it's always very cool when the legends say legendary things about you. This is a quote from him. JT, and he called you JT, was the worker bee, always fishing pucks out of the corners. I don't think I ever saw him come away from the corner with his helmet square on his head. He was always adjusted it because of a collision there. What was it like to hear somebody like Bossy, one of the greatest players of all time, say that kind of stuff about you?
Well, it's an enormous compliment coming from Mike. It's again, figuring out my spot on that team. What was I going to do? God, you got Brian Trottier, you got Mike Bossy, you got Clark Gillies, Dennis Potvin, you got scoring, so I had to figure out something. And I said, damn it, I'm going to be that first guy in that corner, and I'm going to win my battles, and I'm going to try and win them all. You know
what though? You're like, yeah. Let me stop you because while that's true, you were a digger. You were also a playmaker. You were also a scorer. You scored plenty of goals. So I think I appreciate your humility and your humbleness. But let me take you back to your first Stanley Cup in 1980. The Islanders had only been around. This was their 8th season in the NHL. You're in Game 6 with the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers. You're up 3-2, tied in overtime. Tell our audience what happens then to bring the first Stanley Cup to the New York Islanders and to you in particular.
Well, I'll never forget the play. It's a great memory. We in practice, we would practice 2-on-2 forever, like not just for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And two forwards would go down all the way to the other end, crisscross, and come back on two defensemen. And we did this forever in practice. Do you think our defensemen, do you think Dennis Potvin and Stefan Pearson ever bought into it? No, they stayed in their lanes, right?
Yeah.
So it still became a 2-on-2.
Yeah.
So at this particular moment in time of that game, Lauren Henning gets a pass in the neutral zone, and the play is there. The beginning of that play is there. And so I cross over, and Lorne gives it to me, and Bobby crosses behind me. And for one split second, we get Bob Daly to stop for one split second. And so now we create just a quick 2-on-1. So yeah. I have an option. I have an option to shoot or make a pass. And Bobby and I was in such a great position. All I had to do was just make sure I gave him a nice crisp pass, and he finished it.
He finished it, and you guys finish it, and the celebration begins. You guys are Stanley Cup champions. John Tonelli is a Stanley Cup champion. The New York Islanders, for the first time in franchise history, the bench is empty. I mean, the video's there. Go Google it, folks, if you've never seen it. It's crazy. What was that moment like of that celebration on the ice when it was over? Just with that, it was done.
It was such a relief because we had worked so hard. The one thing, if somebody asks me, what it's like to win, you don't realize how hard you had to work to win. You just don't realize it until you win it. And then you look back and you go, nobody wanted to party after that game.
Really?
Everybody was tired. They wanted to go home. I think we had a brief celebration at Mr. Torrey's house, and that happened. That didn't last too long. Guys went home. They were so exhausted.
Wow, that's crazy. What was the reaction like in the whole area from all your hockey fans and the area, the media? What was that like for you guys?
It's family. It really is family. That crowd, and I see it to this day. I see, parents who are now grandparents walking into the new UBS arena with their grandchildren, with their children, and saying, and it's just such a proud feeling to be a part of the New York Islander family.
Wow. So you win in 1980, the first in the history of the franchise, your first Stanley Cup. You win again in 1981. You repeat. Then you're going for your third Stanley Cup in 1982, and you're in the opening round of the playoffs, and you're facing the Pittsburgh Penguins. You're down by a goal with 2:21 left in regulation. You tie the game. So now you're still alive. Now you go to overtime. What was that like? Tell us what happened.
It was a little scary. Because we were out shooting Michel Dion. We were out shooting him, to be 2-1 in shots. And he was playing so well. There was a chance for, I believe, Mike Bullard at the top of the circles. And I remember standing on the bench and watching behind him take a shot that just missed, kind of hit the outside of the post and missed. And then probably the next couple of shifts or so, we jump onto the ice, and I get a breakaway. And and that breakaway happens. I should say that breakaway happens almost at the end of that shift. So I'm exhausted. I'm like striding with every ounce of energy I have. And Paul Baxter is all over me, all over me. And I just barely get to the front of their net. I don't get a shot off, and he hits me, and we fall down into the corner together. And I don't know where it came from, but I got the energy to get up real quick, and I see Bobby Nye all alone in front of the net, and I threw it out to him, and he went to deke, and it slid off his stick, but Michel Dion played that deke, and I come back out to the front of the net. I have a wide open net, wide open. I just buried it, and one of the biggest goals I've ever been a part of is being a part of that thing. And Pittsburgh, they had us. They had us. And, a lot of people said goodnight to the New York Islanders that night.
Yeah, sure. Because you had already won back-to-back cups, and now you're in the opening round of playoffs, and it looks like the Pens are going to oust you. You guys are down. You score the tying goal. You score the OT winner. You're at the center of so many amazing goals. So now you make it. Ultimately, that year you keep on going. You win your third consecutive Stanley Cup. Now it's 1983. Now you're facing the greatest hockey player of all time, Wayne Gretzky, who's in the Cup final against the New York Islanders. And in fairness, it really wasn't a contest. How did you manhandle? I mean, Gretz at that point was in a series of, I think, 5 consecutive seasons of 200 plus points, where he was winning every trophy. He was winning MVPs. He was doing everything. But at that point, you guys really just completely, he did not score a single goal in the Stanley Cup final that only went 4 games, and you swept them. What was it like facing Gretzky and the Oilers in that 4th cup, you guys?
Well, it definitely was a challenge, because we were hearing the buzz of how good they were. And there's no doubt when you talk about Gretz, he is the great one, and hard to play against. But I think we kind of showed up with our discipline and our responsibility, and answered the challenge, right? The challenge. Do we fall to the buzz, or do we stand up to the challenge? And I think obviously we did, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, because they were really, really good. And in hindsight, you're probably going to talk about it, but they probably learned from that episode.
They did. And then they went on their big streak, and then Gretz won his 4 Stanley Cups during his career. And he talks about the fact that was a major wake-up call for him and the entire team. And they went out, made some tweaks, and then they came back to win.
Get ready for the game with the Domino's $8.99 mix and match deal. Score big with any medium 2-topping pizza and any 2 items like pastas, stuffed cheesy bread, boneless chicken, or classic chicken wings. Domino's has you covered. Order today from Canada's favorite pizza at domino's.ca.
I want to talk about Billy Smith, because, one of the greatest all time, a hockey Hall of Famer. He won the Conn Smythe that year. And when you look back at the numbers, you guys only give up a grand total of 6 goals over that 4-game sweep, which in today's day and age, it's impressive, but not shocking. In the era you played, where games were 7-6, 6-5, to hold a team as powerful as Wayne Gretzky's Edmonton Oilers of that era to a grand total of 6 goals over 4 games, that was amazing. What can you say about Billy Smith?
Unbelievable. The ultimate competitor. And boy, you didn't want to mess with him on game day. You did not want to mess with him. Trust me. And he just came with that hockey game face on, and you got to have the backstop. If you don't have the goaltender, you're sitting on the bench, and if he's not making that big save, and giving us a vote of confidence, I mean, it really hurts. And we kind of took Smitty for granted at times, because we knew he was going to make the save. We just knew he was there.
It's just amazing the talent you guys had on those teams. Like Brian Trottier won the Conn Smythe in '80. Butch Gorion in 81, Mike Bossy in 82, Billy Smith in 83. It's amazing. And one of the stats that still stands out to this day is you guys won 19 consecutive playoff series in an era today where, I mean, we've seen the Toronto Maple Leafs. They've got, decades having won one playoff series, and you guys won 19 straight. In the midst of it, as it's happening, versus looking back on it now, years later, are you overwhelmed by that accomplishment, by what you guys were able to do?
I'm absolutely so proud of that, being a part of that team that accomplished those 19 series. Again, I think I've mentioned it before, the work that it takes to win those series is tumultuous. It's really, really, really hard. You gotta have everything. Everybody's got to be going. Not just 10 players. You got to have all 20 plus players, plus the guys that are not playing, ready to play to win those games. Because at any given time, one of us was going to rise to the occasion. Yeah. And it wasn't just always one. It was many of us at one given time would rise to the occasion and save us, and we had an exceptional leader in Al Arbor.
Yeah.
Exceptional. He was just, when we were cocky and playing well and scoring a ton of goals, he'd call us to center ice at the beginning of practice the next day. And he'd tell us, you guys are playing like crap, and we're looking at each other, we're going, what? What's he talking about? But he wanted to knock us down. Yeah. But on the days where we weren't playing well, he'd bump us up. He really knew every one of us psychologically. He really knew how to get the best out of every individual player.
Oh, obviously one of the greatest of all time. You got inducted in the Hockey Hall of Fame in the Builders category in 1996. Speaking of the Hall, you also had 5 players that won all 4 of those cups: Bossy, Gillies, Pavin, Billy Smith, Brian Trottier, all of them going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Is there a level of pride to say that what you guys accomplished in terms of a dynasty, the different elements, the players that were involved in that, and quite frankly, your direct impact and game-tying goals, game-winning goals, Stanley Cup winning, being a part of the Stanley Cup winning goal, that you can walk through the hall and say, this is our rightful place. We deserve to be here. We deserve to be a part of it as one of the most successful franchises in NHL history.
Good. Yeah, you know what? I just know that my teammates and I are very proud of what we accomplished, and we get treated pretty nicely back home at UBS Arena. They welcome us with open arms, and there's no better feeling as an alumni who wore the jersey to walk in. You're always welcome, and you're always appreciated, and it's a lot of fun.
And on the heels of those 4 straight Stanley Cups, now you get some recognition on the international stage, and you get picked on the 1984 Canada Cup team, which I thought was hilarious. The mix of Oilers and Islanders on that team. You actually ended up beating Sweden in the finals. You guys won the gold, and you were the tournament MVPs. But what was it like for you to walk into those dressing rooms after all the battles you had with all these legendary Oilers, and now you're playing with, not against, Gretzky, Coffey, Fuhr, and on the other side was Bossy, Pavin, Tonelli. What was that like for you guys to all come together like that for the Canada Cup?
Well, for me, it was an experience of a lifetime to play on Team Canada, and I was very lucky to be chosen and to go and try out. And when I ended up making a team, I was super excited. Probably most of my friends during that camp were the Oilers, Charlie Huddy and Paul Coffey, and I'm hanging out with these guys. We're doing dinner together and enjoying the day, doing lunch and practice, and Ray Bork and Michelle Goulet, and we're all buddies. We're all hanging out and having a good time. And but it's just the level of that game. It's a real special honor to play on a team with your, for your country. Really is.
And then something kind of like, it was surprising to me, and I got to believe it maybe was shocking to you, the trade to Calgary. I mean, after you came back from the Canada Cup, you got the 4 straight Stanley Cups, the Canada Cup, you guys won the 84 Canada Cup. Now in December of 1985, there was a contract dispute with yourself and the Islanders in terms of what the value was. So now tell our audience about March 11th, 1986, how that all unfolded. How did it come that you ended up being the Calgary Flame?
Totally caught me by surprise. Did not expect it. And my dad was down visiting and coming in for a couple of games that week. And, dads in our locker room, they were treated like kings. Mm-hmm. They walk into our dressing room, every one of us would stand up. And my dad's name was Alec. And, I remember Clark Gillies, hey, Big Al, how you doing? And everybody, worshiped our dads, right? Yeah. There was that respect, unbelievable. So I'm in the stick room getting my stick ready for that night's game against Calgary.
Yeah.
And Jim Pickard, our trainer, is there with me. We're chatting and we're talking, and all of a sudden Bill Torrey comes in to the stick room,
which is never a good sign.
No, and he grabs Pick and he says, "Pick, time for you to leave." And Pick says, "Okay," and it's just me and Bill. And right then, that's what I knew, and I just said, "Where?" And he said, "Calgary," and I just left. I just left. I walked into the dressing room. I grabbed my dad and I said, "Dad, we got to go." He said, "Where are we going?" I said, "No, we got to go." And away we went. So it was probably one of the saddest days of my hockey career, is being blindsided and traded like that. But you know what? After a while, it became business, and that's what it was.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you not playing Calgary that night? Was Calgary not in your barn that night, and so all you did was just move your bag to the other room?
In a grocery cart.
Wow.
In a grocery cart. My trainer, Joey McMahon, grabbed it. We had a grocery cart. He cleaned out my locker and drove it down to the visiting locker room. And that was it. And I really contemplated whether I really felt like playing that night. I didn't want to play.
Of course not. I mean, these are guys you won 4 cups with. You guys went to battle with, and all of a sudden you're playing against them when you didn't see it coming. What was it like that night?
It was, I was in shock on the bench. I don't think I had any emotion. I was very, very disappointed.
Wow. Yeah, but you made the best of it. You ended up helping the Calgary Flames get to the Stanley Cup final that year against the Montreal Canadiens. What was that like, to step in and elevate an organization like that quickly?
Really, really exciting. Boy, did they have a great team too. They really did. But they were young, and it was obvious, not at the time, but it was obvious that they didn't realize that they needed more. They needed a little bit more to beat the Canadiens. I mean, that's the year that Patrick Law was in that.
Yep.
And they had a lot of character on that team, and they outplayed us, and they deserved to win. But boy, we had a really, really good team, but yet not to be discovered, which they discovered I think a year or two later, right?
Yeah. And what a journey for you. I mean, you go from playing with Gordie Howe in your, very early, your pro hockey career. You come up, you win 4 Stanley Cups, including knocking off Wayne Gretzky. Then you play with Wayne Gretzky at the Canada Cup. And then 2 years after being in Calgary, you get traded to the LA Kings and you land on Wayne Gretzky's line. What was that like?
Loved it. Loved it. What a great experience. And that's why Gretz is number one to me, in the game of hockey. What I personally witnessed him take a stadium that probably drew 12, 5, 13 at the most. Maybe they sold out from time to time. But when Gretz came to town, that place was packed, 16-6, and everybody wanted to see the great one, and I could see why. Just and that I was so amazed at the way he acted in front of the press. He was so humble and so honest, and just what, it just kind of rolled off him like it was natural. It didn't bother him, and he did, and you could tell that he loved the game so much when he stepped on that ice. It was so exciting for all of us.
Was there a particular moment that stood out to you, and it was kind of like, yeah, this is real. This is pretty crazy. I'm playing with the great one, Wayne Gretzky.
Well, for me, it's winning.
Yeah.
How do we get the Los Angeles Kings to win a Stanley Cup? Yeah. Right? At that time, when I was there, God, wait, they got Gretz. They brought in Mike Krushelinski. We got Larry, the Big Bird. We got Larry Robinson. We got Marty McSorley. So those are my line mates, Krushelinski and McSorley. And playing with those guys, boy, oh boy, what a treat that was. It was special.
Crazy. Something we should talk to our audience right now about. It's always interesting to talk to guys, and I love doing this podcast because I can find out where are they now, what are they doing now. And for a lot, post NHL career, it's like I'm golfing, I'm, coaching my kids or my grandkids or whatever. You became a securities broker, but not just after your career. You were working towards this stuff, which is, for those who don't know, it's insane to try to get your license to be able to do this. The kind of studying and the kind of work you had to do, and you did it while you were playing. What was that like for you, and what drove you to do that?
Well, I was a strong believer in it, and this kind of comes back in my junior days when I'm playing for George Armstrong. And back in those days, they created a contract for juniors to sign that you couldn't go to the NHL or be drafted until you're 20 years old.
Right.
So on my birthday, when I turned 18, I repudiated that contract. And the Toronto Marlies said, well, you can't play for us anymore. I said, what? Oh, yeah. And the chief came up to me and said, you know what? Keep yourself busy, stay in school, and at that time, a lot of the Marlies at that time were sweeping the gardens after practice. And Joy, the chief, always told me, he said, I don't want to see you up in those stands. I want to see you in school doing your thing. So I'll never forget. I've always had that, like, gotta keep that mind going, gotta keep, mentally sharp. And when I was playing in the WHA, I was playing with men that were 35 years old, and I'm 18 years old. Yeah. And basically there's a gentleman by the name of Larry Lund who comes onto the bus, and he sits like 5 rows on the right, and he opens up a briefcase. And I come on the bus, and I'm like 6 rows to the left by myself. And then the rest of the guys are at the back of the bus. They're playing cards and laughing and giggling. And I kind of said to myself, I got to make a decision here. Do I go back with those guys having fun, or do I ask that guy, what are you doing? Why do you have a briefcase? Nice. So that's what I did. I mustered up enough courage to go up to Larry and say, hey, Larry, can I ask you what you're doing?
Yeah.
He says, well, sit down, I'll tell you. So, he had a hockey school, and he had some real estate, and he said, look behind you. And I said, okay. He said, what do you see? I said, I see a bunch of guys having fun. And what he told me? He said, not one of those guys knows what he's going to do next year. That scared the crap out of me. Yeah. he said to me right there and then, he said, "You find something to do."
Good
So,
for you.
yeah. And I listened, and I just can't thank Larry enough today. We talk, a couple of times a year, and I thank him, but thank him so much for giving me that advice.
And you got the best of both worlds. You got
Yep.
the pinnacle of the NHL with 4-time Stanley Cup champion, the Canada Cup, and you're highly successful in the business world, which I heard you're also working with Pat Flatley, one of the old longtime Islanders, which is great. I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed this, John. This is so amazing to catch up with you. I'm so happy that you're doing so well. Before I let you go, you've already been real generous with our time. Do you mind if we play 5 fast facts? I asked you 5 quick questions. You give me the 5 quick things that come to mind right away.
Sure.
Yep. All right, here we go.
Sure.
Time now for 5 fast facts with 4-time Stanley Cup champion, member of the New York Islanders dynasty, John Tonelli. John, best teammate you ever played with, who was it?
Bob Nystrom.
And I think this next one is going to be easy. The best coach you ever played for?
Al Arbor.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. You love talking about Al. We all do. Hockey Hall of Famer. I get that. I'm looking forward to this one. Who did you hate playing against the most and why?
Oh, there are many of those. Do I have to answer it quickly?
Well, give your thought. What do you think? Whoever comes to mind.
So the visiting team, if they had to play against Clark, Bob won, or me, I got the assignment. I had to play against Terry O'Reilly, Paul Holmgren. Those were tough assignments.
I get that. After all the success in your career, both on and off the ice, is there one piece of advice you would have given to your 15-year-old self if you could have said something to yourself back then before this all happened? What would you say?
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty lucky. Things went pretty well for me, break-wise and bounces, and I'm pretty lucky. I'm really grateful for you know what? I wish I could have explained to my parents better where I was heading and where I wanted to go. Perfect.
One final question. If you hadn't become a pro hockey player, what career do you think you would have chosen instead?
I probably would have ended up in my hometown, Milton, working at the steel plant.
Wow. But I think you made the right decision, my friend. On behalf of hockey fans and your old teammates, let me just say, great call by you. 5 fast facts with the only guy in NHL history to score a regular season goal, assisted by Gordie Howe and by Wayne Gretzky as well, John Tonelli. John, thank you so much for this, buddy. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this and how happy I am that things are going so well for you. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
You're very welcome, Gino. Take care, bud.
Our guest has been 4-time Stanley Cup champion, John Tonelli. The Overtime Podcast is proudly presented by Domino's Pizza and Athlete's Care. If you're watching the big game at home or hungry right now, Domino's has you covered. Check out the Domino's Mix and Match deal. Medium 2-toppings pizzas, pastas, stuffed cheesy bread, boneless chicken, or classic chicken wings. Any 2 items for only $8.99 each. Canada's favorite pizza at Domino's.ca. Athlete's Care is proud to be celebrating its 26th year, offering sports medicine services to both elite athletes and the general population who require rehab for a new or chronic injury or pain. Go to where the best go. Athlete's Care Sports Medicine Clinics with 24 locations in the Greater Toronto Area and Ottawa. Hey, if you missed any parts of the show, don't worry. Visit our website at overtimepodcast.ca where you can both listen and subscribe to future shows. The Domino's Pizza Overtime Podcast can be found on Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast platforms as well. Please check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at O-Time Podcast. Until next week, I'm Gino Reda saying so long, hockey fans, and thanks for joining us on the Domino's Overtime Podcast.